All right, we did it once. You guys loved it. Let's do it again. Except now it just means more for the Spurs this season and the free agency of 2025. There is plenty of directions that they can go to finish rounding out this roster and become competitive and start making the playoffs after 6 long years. And I think they can already do it now, but now if they just play their cards right, get a few little minor moves, it's going to be some happy, scary hours in San Antonio. So, we're doing it again as we've done it once before, but we're cutting it down to 4 players instead of 5. So, here are 4 players that the Spurs should sign heading into free agency. This is the eve of free agency. I'm recording this on Sunday, so plenty can happen, and everything is going to go down in just about 24 hours. So, without further ado, let's get into the players, and we're going to kick it off with an honorable mention, and we're actually going to kick it off with a re-signing of Chris Paul. Now, there's plenty of reasons as to why they could bring him back because it just depends on what they're going to do with Fox, Castle, and Harper. Are they going to start all 3 of them together? Because if they do, then maybe you do add another backup point guard. But if they don't, and you put Harper as a 6-man, then they have no need to go get another guard. Listen, he played all 82 games last season, and everybody knows about the leadership qualities that you're getting when you bring Chris Paul into a locker room. He helped Devin Booker elevate his game. He obviously helped Shai Gilgeous-Alexander elevate his game. I don't think SGA becomes the player that he is without the mentorship of Chris Paul. Sure, he probably still becomes a shell of it, but Chris Paul did so much to help SGA elevate his game, and so we all know what he can do. And he was in the locker room last season with Wemby and specifically Stephon Castle. So Castle and Wemby have already had a year of leadership under Chris Paul, and who's to say that they will not benefit from another one, especially now that they're adding Dylan Harper to the mix. But it is known that Chris Paul wants to start. He was promised a starting spot last season before he signed with us, and that's why he was still a starter when they traded for De'Aaron Fox in those lineups. Did not work at all. We all know how terribly they were defensively, and that Fox was an off-ball guard, which just didn't work. And he also wants to play closer to home back in Los Angeles, so I highly doubt he's going to sign anywhere in Texas. I doubt he resigns with the Spurs, and I doubt that he signs with the Mavericks because I know they're probably looking to bring him in to be a placeholder while Kyrie is out, so that could be an opportunity for him to start, but I do not think he is going to go to Dallas. He's going to go play somewhere where he can just play. I know he wants to play for his family, for his kids. I think at that point, that just means more to him than winning a championship. So I don't think he's coming back to San Antonio, but if I were the Spurs, I absolutely would try and do everything I can to get him back in the door on a minimum. But that's why it's the honorable mention. So let's get to player number 4, and I think this is actually a guy they are going to sign in free agency, and that is Luke Cornett from the Boston Celtics. It just comes down to the fact that the Spurs desperately need a backup center, and they can get one for very cheap in Cornett. They can bring him in on the MLE, and he can be a rim-to-rim big who just does everything that they need and specifically just provides size and verticality off the bench. When it comes to backup centers, the Spurs struggled with that last season after trading away Zach Collins to the Chicago Bulls as a part of the De'Aaron Fox trade. And despite the fact that Zach Collins really wasn't great with the Spurs, they still desperately lacked a hole in size and physicality down low, because that's what Zach Collins did bring every night. And now Charles Bassey is not a bad player, but he cannot stay healthy. He's had multiple injuries throughout multiple years in the Spurs. I know he's had a torn MCL, he tore his ACL last season and missed the majority of last year, and then he had a MCL sprain. He had something right after the trade, and then they forced Jeremy Sohan to play center, and that just didn't work at all. So now you go in and you go get a backup center. Cornett is just typically your old school center. He thrives on just chilling in the blocks on both ends of the floor. And offensively, he just patiently waits for the ball to come his way. And on defense, he can just sit in the same spots while he waits for people to challenge him at the rim, and he handles them just fine. His lack of three-point shooting actually benefits the way that he plays, and specifically in the pick and roll, since his defenders don't really expect him to pop out and shoot a 3 because that's the day that we're in basketball. Centers can pick and pop out to the three-point line and shoot 3s. Cornett doesn't do that. He's made probably 1 3-pointer in his entire career, and I remember when that went viral because everyone was talking about it. But since he doesn't go out and shoot 3s, defenders that are picking him up on the pick and roll actually swap to the ball handler more often than not, and he just cuts to the basket and ball handlers find him for an easy finish inside. I don't know how you lose a guy who is 7 feet, but they do that with Luke Cornett. The soon-to-be 30-year-old actually has a very sneaky first step when he blows by defenders, and when he gets to the rim while running the pick and roll from the three-point line, he actually is very quick in general. Now, he's not really a fast big, But for his size, he actually moves a lot better than you'd expect. And so he's not lightning fast, but he's going to get there quicker than you think. One of his best traits on offense is just the ability he has to create second chance points. Last season, he was one of the top second chance points generators in the league, and he created 120 second chance points for the Celtics last year, which was one of the top in the league. His size and verticality allowed him just to control the offensive glass, get rebounds, and normally when he grabbed them, he was either going to dunk it or he was going to find an open teammate. Not a bad playmaker by any means. He's not going to pass the ball in any flashy ways, but if he finds an open teammate and he's in trouble, he's going to kick it out to him. He's going to make the right read. Very basic, very fundamental, but if he gets an offensive rebound, he's probably going to throw it down. Now, I've mentioned verticality a few times, and that's surprisingly one of the best traits about his game, because we all know about the signature three-point contest from inside the paint that is actually statistically better than just a standard contest, but Cornett has the ability to rise up, and there's not really a doubt about it. Defensively, when he is going to challenge anybody who steps in his way, he's going to go up and he's going to meet him at the rim. He's very fearless at doing that, and what's great about it is he's going to do it without fouling. He doesn't average an insane amount of blocks. He averaged, a block a game last season, but he only averaged 1.6 fouls in 18 minutes of action. So he's going to contest with his hands straight up, and he is not going to foul, which is actually an extremely valuable trait in this league. Overall, the Spurs really just need him to play 20 minutes a game, get some rebounds, contest some shots, and they'll be just fine to potentially get him on the MLE. And over the last few days, heading into free agency, it's known that the Spurs are very interested in Cornett, and they have the ability to potentially pay him the max mid-level exception, around $14 million, since Boston is having to dump off so much money. They dumped off Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Who knows if anyone else could be next, but the point is Celtics have a lot of guys to pay, and they're not going to pay Cornett. So I think Cornett is a big one to watch for the Spurs. Coming in at number 3, we got a fellow French native who made his name known in the 2024 Olympics, and that is Gershon Yabusle. We know what he did in the Olympics, and he earned a one-year contract with the 76ers, and the Spurs need size on the bench, so he can either be a backup power forward, and if the Spurs choose to do so, they play some small ball, he can play some small ball center. Yabusele is an extremely capable three-point shooter. Last season, he shot 36% from beyond the arc, and while he can be used in a pick-and-pop situation, he is at his best when he is just coming downhill. And there are not many players in the league who are going to want to challenge this guy because he is a body and a force to be reckoned with. You need to clear the runway anytime you see him attack the basket. He's going to put up the ball on the ground, take a dribble or two, and before you know it, this dude is coming up and he's going to catch a poster. The Spurs need bigger bodies who can attack the basket and be fearless at the rim, and Yabusele is that. I know they have Keldon Johnson, who is nicknamed the Big Body, but he dropped a lot of weight heading into last season, and he's only 6'5", so yeah, he's a big body in terms of for a regular human, but as NBA, 6'5" is a tall point guard and like a shooting guard around there. So they need Yabusele to come in and play minutes at the backup 4. This is a guy who genuinely just understands his role. You do not need him to go out there and score 20 points every night and be one of the best role players in the league or be a runner for 6th man of the year. Overall, he's just very comfortable playing without the ball in his hands. He gets to his spots and he makes good things happen when the ball is in his hands. He is, again, a big body who sees a sliver of daylight and can kick it into 6th gear, and he will not let anybody stop him. Obviously, we do know what he did in the Olympics. We all know that amazing poster that he had over LeBron that had us petrified and almost sent the black fans to France. So we know that this dude is talented, and the Sixers were not really a team to watch this season because of all their injuries. So not a lot of people were paying attention to Yabusele, but he played really solid minutes for them. So we know that the connection he has with Wemby, and honestly, I would not be surprised if Wemby is trying to tamper him to get him to San Antonio. I think these dudes would have a perfect fit together. We know what they did in the Olympics, so overall, I have no doubt that this guy would fit right in with the Spurs, and that is why he comes in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we've got Nquille Walker, a guard out of Minnesota, and he is listed as a shooting guard, but in this scenario, you probably bring him in as a backup point guard. He played a lot of primary ball handler for the Timberwolves last season. He did only average 2.7 assists, but that doesn't really matter because he is just quietly one of the league's most underrated floor generals. He makes good things happen when the ball is in his hands. He can run an offense. He can find open players. He can just make things happen, and he's a pretty flashy passer at the same time as as well. He is one of those players who just literally has a natural knack for seeing the floor and just finding open teammates, and once again, in creative ways if need be. He's 26 years old, and when the ball is in his hands, good things are going to happen. If he has a primary point guard role off the bench, he feels like one of those players that's like, hey, if he had a bigger role, he probably would thrive, not to like a star, but, you know, kind of like Andrew Nembhard, kind of in that same category. He is a very solid defender. He's not really going to do anything that impacts the box scores, but at 6'5", very solid perimeter defender. He plays with all the effort in the world, very prideful about his defense. He makes things happen. He's just pesky, and that's overall what you want from a guy that size. It is looking more and more apparent that Nquille Walker's days with the Timberwolves are coming to an end. They just re-signed Naz Reid to a huge 5-year, $125 million contract, and they just signed Julius Randle to a 3-year, $100 million contract. So it looks like he is out the door. If the Spurs are going to run Fox, Harper, and Castle, then you need to probably bring in another guard. But if they're going to bring Harper off the bench, then you're fine, because then that solves your backup point guard situation. But they're still going to be pretty guard heavy. Obviously, they have Blake Wesley, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and it kind of feels like there's some odd men out with Vassell and Keldon Johnson. So who knows what's going to happen to them this offseason. But overall, if you think that they're going to run Fox, Harper, and Castle, it might be worth bringing Alexander Walker in and then maybe seeing how expendable a Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson really is. That is why he comes in at 2 and not number 1, because number 1 is Brook Lopez. I get it. Much older guy, but he fills the Spurs' biggest need, which is the backup center, and I think he is the best potential option for a backup center, and they can continue to use the mid-level exception on him and look around a contract of something like 2 years, each worth $8 million a year. We know the things that Brook Lopez is capable of. He was a runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year a few years ago, and he's still one of the best shot blockers in the league, and he still has the legs to get it done. He's going to be a challenger. He's going to contest anybody that comes in his way, and the Spurs desperately need that off the bench. Offensively, I actually think it's possible that the Spurs can run a Wemby and Lopez Twin Towers style lineup the way that they ran Tim Duncan and David Robinson for those few short years while they were together in San Antonio. And it's because of the fact that Wemby likes to have the ball in his hands. So if you let Wemby kind of run the 4 or let him just play positionless, because he's going to dominate with the ball in his hands. We know the creativity of something that we have never seen from a big man like that. But if you let Wemby get the ball in his hands and you let him kind of run isolation, if you bring out Brook Lopez for a pick and roll, that is just something I need to see with my own eyes to tell my children that I saw a Victor Wembanyama and Brook Lopez pick and roll. I just think it would be hilarious to see. But since Lopez is known as a pick and pop style guy, that is what he's used to. So one way or another, you let Brook Lopez chill in the paint, and then you let Wemby do his thing at the top of the key. Wemby's doing his thing. He's doing whatever he needs to do, and then you bring Brook Lopez in for a screen. Okay, so Lopez screens that guy, and he pops out, and now he's chilling at the three-point line. So guess what? Now the paint is wide open. It's not cluttered, and Victor can do whatever he needs to do to get to the paint, and he can control that because we saw his highlights, how he makes the 10-foot NBA basketball regulation hoop look like a little Tykes hoop. So we know he can dominate the paint, and it doesn't matter who's in his way. But if they send 2 defenders on Victor, then just pop it out to Brook Lopez. He was a 37% three-point shooter last season. I think this fit just works perfectly on offense because if you let Lopez chill in the paint and then he calls for a screen, if Victor calls for a screen, then you just bring Brook Lopez out and he can pop out for a 3, which leaves the paint open for Victor to do his thing. Overall, I just think that is a perfect fit on offense. And so I think if you put them together, good things are going to happen. But we do know that Wemby tried to play the 4 a little bit at the start of his career in his rookie year, but it really didn't work out with Zach Collins. But who knows? Maybe with a more defensively minded big, because we know what he can do on that end of the floor, maybe it would work. Maybe since you have a guy who plays more of the interior, it could work on both ends of the floor. But do you really want to take Victor Wembanyama out of the paint? No. No, you don't. But still, at the end of the day, how is anyone going to score over a Brook Lopez and Victor Wembanyama interior duo? Like, you're not. You're just not going to score over them. And there's no way around. But that is it. Those are the 4 players that I think should come to the Spurs this offseason. I believe that if the Spurs bring these guys in, then good things are going to happen. They're going to have a very solid 11-man rotation, and I think they can finally put an end to that 6-year playoff drought. What did you guys think of the players that I listed? Do you have any other players you think the Spurs should bring in? Let me know in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and make sure you turn on that post notification bell so you never miss when I upload a video here on Ty Talk Sports. So, until next time, I am signing off, and I will see you guys next time.